Tonight, you've been invited somewhere most people only ever imagine, not because you earned it, not because you were born into it, and certainly not because anyone asked whether you actually wanted the responsibility. A sealed invitation arrived with your name on it, and now, for the next 7 days, you will live inside one of the most beautiful places ever built, a palace of endless halls, soft candlelight, perfect gardens, silk curtains moving with the evening air. From the outside, it looks like a dream. Inside, it runs on rules. Before we begin, settle in somewhere comfortable. Dim the lights if you can. Maybe let a little background noise fill the room. And if you enjoy quiet journeys through strange corners of history, you already know where the subscribe button is. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Now, take a slow breath and imagine this. Until this morning, your biggest concerns were ordinary ones: family expectations, what to wear tomorrow, whether people quietly judged your choices, normal things. Then everything changed. A carriage stopped outside your home. Someone stepped out carrying a letter. Heavy paper, a royal seal. You opened it expecting some mistake. Instead, it said, "You are invited to spend 1 week as an honored guest inside the royal palace. No explanation, no reason, only instructions. Arrive in 3 days. Bring very little. Follow all palace customs." At first, it feels impossible, then exciting, then strangely unsettling, because the more people congratulate you, the quieter they become afterward. Nobody says much about what happens once you arrive, only things like, "Be careful what you say," "Don't ask too many questions," and "Remember, every beautiful place has its rules." You tell yourself people are exaggerating. After all, how difficult could life inside a palace really be? Beautiful clothes, endless meals, servants, music, comfort. You have no idea that by the end of your first evening, you'll miss making your own decisions. Because some places don't lock their doors, they simply make sure you never feel comfortable leaving. So, the carriage is waiting, and your week inside the palace begins now. The first thing you notice when you enter your room isn't the bed, it's the silence. Not the kind of silence where nothing makes a sound, but the kind where everyone seems allowed to speak, and somehow no one does. In the center of the room sits a large bed. Heavy curtains frame the tall windows, and on the table there is a small card. It reads, "Evening dinner, 12 minutes after sunset. Guests must be seated according to the assigned order." You pause for a moment. Why 12 minutes? Why not 10? Why not 15? But here, it feels like every rule belongs to an old tradition, one that nobody remembers anymore, and nobody questions. You adjust your clothes. You glance at yourself in the mirror. For a second, you barely recognize the person looking back. Everything appears right. Everything looks beautiful. And yet, somehow it all feels a little too perfect. By the time you make your way downstairs, the sky has turned deep blue. The dining hall doors open. Warm light spills across the floor. A long table, rows of polished silver, many guests, all quiet, no one speaking loudly, no one laughing. And strangely, it doesn't feel uncomfortable. It feels more like everyone has rehearsed their role in a very old performance. Someone quietly guides you to your seat. Before sitting, you glance around, and then you notice something. Everyone sits the same way, the same angle, the same posture, as if invisible strings have already decided where everyone belongs. You sit. A few moments later, the first course arrives. Beautiful, delicate. You naturally reach for your spoon, and then the woman seated to your right looks at you. She says nothing. She simply shifts her own spoon by an inch. Immediately, you understand. You did something wrong. Without a word, you adjust your hand. Nobody reacts. Nobody comments. But somehow, it feels like everyone noticed. Dinner continues. Every few minutes, someone stands, someone sits, someone lowers their head. You don't understand the pattern, so you quietly copy the others. And the strange thing is, nobody corrects you, nobody embarrasses you. Everything is arranged so carefully that you begin correcting yourself. At the end of dinner, a staff member approaches and speaks softly. "I hope your first evening was comfortable," you answer. "I think it was." They nod gently, then say, "Tomorrow you'll begin to feel more natural." And somehow that sentence stays with you. More natural? For what? For the palace or for the rules? Back in your room, you stand beside the window, moonlight outside, lights inside turning off exactly on schedule, and you realize, today, you didn't break a single rule, yet somehow, you never once felt entirely like yourself. The morning bell. You don't remember falling asleep, only that at some point, your thoughts became quieter than the room, and then a bell, soft, clear, not loud enough to wake you suddenly, just impossible to ignore. Your eyes open. For a moment, you forget where you are. The curtains remain closed. The room is dim, no sunlight, no movement, only the fading sound of the bell. You reach toward the clock beside the bed. 7:12. Exactly. You sit up slowly, and then you notice something strange. No footsteps in the hallway, no doors opening, no voices, nothing. You stand and move toward the window, pull the curtain aside. Outside, the gardens are already alive. Guests walking, staff preparing tables, people reading, everything moving quietly, as if everyone woke up long ago. You look back at the clock, 7:13. You quickly get dressed and step into the hallway. The corridor's calm, too calm. No rushing, no late guests, no sleepy faces, only people moving with the quiet confidence of those who already knew where they were meant to be. You begin walking, then notice something. Every room door is closed, perfectly closed, not one slightly open, not one delayed. Downstairs, breakfast is already prepared. People sit in their places, eating quietly. No phones, no newspapers, no unnecessary conversation. You find an empty seat. A server appears almost immediately, smiles, places tea in front of you, then says, "Good timing." You smile politely, then ask, "What time does breakfast start?" The server pauses, just briefly, then replies, "Breakfast begins when the bell rings." You nod, then ask, "And what if someone sleeps through it?" For the first time, the server seems confused, not worried, not offended, just confused, as if the question itself doesn't quite make sense. After a moment, they answer very gently, "Nobody does." Then they leave. You sit quietly, watching everyone. Nobody looks tired. Nobody yawns. Nobody checks the time. And suddenly, you realize something that feels too small to matter, yet impossible to ignore. Nobody here is choosing when to wake up. You glance toward the windows. The sky outside is bright now, but somehow, you already missed the feeling of not knowing what time it was. Because here, time doesn't seem to pass. It seems to arrive, to be continued. Part 4. Later that afternoon, you discover a room that doesn't appear on any map of the palace. The room that isn't on the map. By afternoon, the palace begins to feel smaller. Not because you've explored it, but because it feels as though the palace has already explored you. You learn the paths, the garden, the reading room, the long corridor with portraits that seem older than memory. Everything is quiet, ordered, expected, and yet there's a strange feeling growing underneath it all, like there's always one more hallway than you remember, one more turn, one more door. After lunch, you find a folded map waiting in your room. Simple, elegant, every hallway labeled, every room carefully marked. At the bottom, a handwritten note. For your comfort, please remain within mapped areas. You unfold it completely. Libraries, gardens, dining halls, guest rooms, everything appears ordinary until you notice something. Near the eastern wing, there's empty space, not blank, not decorative, just unused, as if something should be there. You stare at it for a moment, then fold the map and leave. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. You're only curious, nothing more. The eastern hallway is quieter than the others. Thicker carpet, dimmer light, fewer windows. As you walk, the palace begins to feel different, less like a hotel, more like somewhere that expects to be obeyed. You pass numbered doors, room 41, room 42, room 43, then nothing. No room 44, just uninterrupted wall. You stop, look again, room 43, then directly, room 45. You smile to yourself, probably intentional, probably nothing. You continue walking, and then you notice it. Not a door, not exactly, just a line in the wall. Thin, perfectly vertical, easy to miss. You reach out, touch it, cold. Your fingers move along the edge, and suddenly the wall shifts, not dramatically, not with hidden machinery, just quietly, as though it had always expected you. Behind it, a room, small, still, almost empty. No furniture, no windows, only a single chair and another folded map. You step inside, close enough to see. This map looks identical, except for one difference. Your room is marked, but beside the room number, there's handwriting, a date, yesterday's date. Underneath it, one line, adjustment period, day 1. You stare, then slowly unfold the rest. Other rooms, other dates, different handwriting, same note. Day 1, day 3, day 7. Completed, completed, completed. Your chest feels tight, not afraid, just aware. You fold the map, place it back exactly where it was, leave the room, and when you turn around, the wall is smooth again. No line, no doorway, nothing. That evening, you return to your room, and for the first time, you lock the door, not because you think something will come in, but because suddenly you're not completely sure what this place expects from the people who stay. Later, you notice something hanging beside the bed. You're certain it wasn't there before. A small card, 3 words. Day 2 begins after midnight. That evening feels normal, too normal. Dinner arrives at the expected time. Guests speak softly. Nothing unusual happens. And somehow, that feels stranger than anything else. Back in your room, you notice the card again. Day 2 begins. No signature, no explanation. You place it face down. You tell yourself you won't think about it. Tonight, you decide to stay awake, not to escape, not to prove anything, only because you want to know. What happens here when nobody is meant to be watching? Hours pass, the palace becomes quieter, lights fade one by one, the hallway outside empties. You sit beside the window, reading, waiting. At some point, a clock somewhere strikes midnight. Soft, measured, 12 slow notes. Nothing changes. You almost laugh. Maybe that was all. Maybe there is nothing hidden here. Then you notice something. Outside, the garden lights turn off. Not all at once, one by one. like someone walking through the grounds extinguishing them. You stand, move closer, and suddenly you realize people are outside, walking slowly, silently, guests still dressed neatly, moving through the gardens. No conversation, no destination, just walking. You watch for a while. Nobody seems lost. Nobody seems awake either. You open your room door. The hallway is empty, but not completely. Somewhere in the distance, soft footsteps. You follow them, not quickly, just enough to hear. Turn after turn. The palace at night feels different, longer, the ceilings higher, the silence deeper. You reach the main staircase and stop. Someone is standing there, a guest, hands folded, looking straight ahead, not moving. You wait. After a while, they slowly turn their head, look at you, smile politely, then ask, "Why are you awake?" The question feels ordinary, but something about it doesn't. You answer quietly, "I couldn't sleep." They nod as if they understand, then say, "That usually passes." And without another word, they continue walking. Down the stairs, into darkness. You don't follow. You return to your room, close the door, lock it. You check the clock, 12:47. You sit on the bed, certain now something changes here after midnight. You look toward the window one last time. The gardens are empty again, like nobody had ever been there. Then you notice something beside your door, another card. You don't remember hearing anyone enter. You pick it up. Only one sentence. Guests are encouraged to rest during adjustment. You place the card down, turn off the light, and for the first time, you wonder if staying awake was exactly what this place expected. The conversation you don't remember. The next morning, the bell rings again. Soft, precise, unavoidable. You wake immediately. No confusion this time. No resistance either. For a moment, that thought bothers you. You get ready. Open the door. The hallway is already awake. Everything exactly where it should be. Exactly as yesterday. As if yesterday had been copied and placed here again. At breakfast, you choose a different seat. Nothing dramatic, just curiosity. A small decision. A quiet reminder to yourself that you can still choose. A server notices, smiles politely, and says, "Of course, you preferred this side yesterday as well." You pause. You didn't. You're certain. Yesterday, you sat near the windows. You remember because you watched the garden. You almost explain. But somehow, you don't. You sit. Tea arrives. Exactly the same. A few minutes later, the woman from the first dinner appears, the one who corrected your spoon without speaking. She sits nearby, looks at you kindly, then says, "I'm glad you slept better." You look up, confused. You answer, "I didn't sleep well." She gives a small smile, like someone hearing a familiar joke. Then she says, "You said the same thing yesterday." You stare. You never spoke to her yesterday. You're sure of that? You try to remember. Breakfast, dinner, the hallway. Nothing. No conversation. She continues calmly. You asked if people ever leave early. You feel still. You never asked that. You know you never asked that. You ask carefully. "What did you say?" She lifts her cup, thinks for a second, then replies, "I told you the same thing everyone learns eventually." She looks directly at you, not cold, not threatening, just calm, then says, "You leave when it feels natural to leave." She returns to her tea, conversation over. You sit there quietly, trying to remember, and then something strange happens. For less than a second, you almost remember asking, not a real memory, more like the feeling of a memory, a sentence without words, a moment without details. gone immediately. Breakfast ends, people stand, chairs move at the same time. You remain seated. When the room empties, you notice something under your cup, a folded paper. No one nearby. You open it. Only one line, handwritten. Try writing things down. No signature. You fold it, put it in your pocket. Back in your room. You take a blank page. Write one sentence. I did not speak to anyone this morning. You place it beside the bed. Simple, certain. Then you leave for the afternoon. Hours later, you return. The paper is still there. Same position, same handwriting. Except there is now another line underneath, written in ink you don't recognize. You did. You stand there quietly, reading it again and again, because suddenly you're not sure which sentence was written first. The notebook in your handwriting. You don't mention the note, not to anyone, not because you're afraid, only because you're not sure what you would even ask. You spend the afternoon normally, walk the gardens, read in the library, watch guests move through their routines. Everything appears unchanged. But now, you begin noticing small things. People never seem to look for anything. Nobody checks the time. Nobody forgets where they were going. Nobody hesitates, as if every decision had already become easy. That evening, you return to your room earlier than usual. The paper is still beside the bed, your sentence, and the reply beneath it. Neither one changed. You place both inside a drawer, close it, and decide. Tonight, you'll write everything down, not because you distrust the palace, only because you want something that belongs entirely to you. You search the room, desk, cabinet, shelves. Then, inside the lowest drawer, you find a notebook, dark cover, no title, no decoration. You don't remember seeing it before. You open it. The first page is blank. Second page, blank. Third page, writing. You freeze. Your handwriting, not similar, not familiar, but yours. The exact shape, the same pressure, even the way certain letters lean. You stare, then read. Day 1 room, acceptable. Rules unusual. No concerns. Next page is day 2, stayed awake. Unnecessary. Your hand becomes still. You turn pages faster. Every page dated. Every page written neatly. Short observations. Routine notes. Small details. And gradually, less detail. Day 3, day 4, day 5. Fewer words. Shorter sentences. Until eventually, pages become almost empty. Then, you reach the final completed page. No date, only one line. Written carefully, written slowly, written by you. I think I'm becoming more comfortable. You close the notebook immediately. Stand. Look around the room. Everything unchanged. Nothing hidden. Nothing moving. You open the notebook again. Back page. Inside cover. And there. Small handwriting. Almost missed. If found before completion, please continue writing. You sit down, thinking, breathing, looking at the pen on the desk. Then, you do something simple. You turn to a new blank page and write. I have never seen this notebook before. You close it, leave the room, walk the whole way, stay away for hours. When you finally return, the notebook is exactly where you left it. You open it, your sentence remains. Underneath it, same handwriting, same ink, a reply. That's normal. You stare, turn the page. The next page, blank, except for a single sentence at the top, waiting. Day 7, and underneath, nothing, as if someone expects you to finish it. You slowly close the notebook, place it back inside the drawer, turn out the lights, and lie down. But before sleeping, you realize something you hadn't noticed before. The notebook never once said, "Who wrote day one?" Nobody gives you a number. The next morning, you wake a second before the bell, not intentionally. Your eyes simply open, and then, right on time, the sound arrives. Soft, measured, expected. You stay in bed for a moment, thinking about the notebook. Day 7. The unfinished page. The handwriting. Your handwriting, but not your memory. You decide something simple. Today, you'll ask one question. Nothing dramatic, nothing impossible, just something ordinary. How long do guests usually stay? Breakfast arrives, tea, silver, quiet conversation. Everything as usual, and you wait. Eventually, you ask the server, lightly, almost casually, "How long do guests normally remain here?" The server smiles. No hesitation, no discomfort, just a calm answer. "That depends." You nod. Wait. The server doesn't continue. So you ask, "Depends on what?" The smile remains exactly the same. Then they say, "On when it begins to feel complete," and leave. You sit quietly. That answer means nothing, which somehow makes it worse. Later in the library, you try again. An older guest, reading, relaxed. You sit nearby. After a while, you ask, "How long have you been staying?" The guest closes the book, thinks for a moment, then smiles, not confused, not secretive, just thoughtful, and says, "Not long." You ask, "A few days?" They look toward the window, then answer, "I don't think in days anymore." You wait for them to laugh, they don't. Instead, they ask you, "Does it feel long to you?" You open your mouth, then stop, because suddenly you're not sure. Day 1, day 2, day 7. But those came from notes, not from feeling. You try to remember arriving, the road, your luggage, checking in. You remember all of it. And somehow, none of it feels recent. You leave the library, walk outside. The gardens feel familiar, too familiar. You pass a fountain, and without thinking, you turn left, then right, then through a narrow path, and stop. You know exactly where you are, even though you've never walked this route before, or at least you don't remember walking it. Ahead, a small stone wall covered in ivy, a bronze plaque, simple, no decoration, only text. You step closer, read it. Guests are encouraged not to measure progress by time. Underneath, smaller letters, almost hidden. Most guests stop asking. You stand there, reading it twice, then 3 times, trying to decide whether that sentence feels comforting or like a warning. That evening, back in your room, you open the notebook, turn to the blank page. Day 7, you pick up the pen and write, "I still want to know how long people stay." You close the notebook. Wait, nothing happens. You almost smile. Then, as you turn off the light, you see one new line appear beneath yours. Not instantly, not dramatically, just there. You won't ask forever. You don't open the notebook again. You lie down, and for the first time, you realize you can't remember whether you ever planned to leave. The arrival that doesn't match that night. You dream, not unusual, not dramatic, just a dream. You're arriving at the palace. The car moves slowly through the gates. The sky is pale. Your suitcase sits beside you. Everything feels familiar. You've seen this memory before, or thought you had. The car stops. Someone opens the door. You step outside. And then something small feels wrong. In your memory, you arrived alone, but in the dream, someone is standing beside you. Not close, not speaking, you just there. You try to look at them. Every time you turn, your attention slips away, like forgetting a name while saying it. A staff member appears, smiles, welcomes you, then says, Welcome back. You pause. In the dream, you answer immediately, without surprise, without questions, like you expected those words. Then the dream changes. You're walking inside, but now you notice details, things you never remembered. You don't ask where your room is. You already know. You don't ask where dinner is. You already turn in the right direction. You don't look around. You don't explore. You simply continue, like someone returning somewhere familiar. Then you stop. In the dream, you see yourself ahead of you, walking, same clothes, same posture, not looking back. You follow, neither of you speaks, until the version ahead of you stops, turns slightly, and says, "Try not to compare." You want to ask, "Compare what?" But before you speak, everything becomes quiet. Not dark, not empty, just quiet. And in that quiet, one final sentence, soft, like something remembered instead of heard. Arriving feels different every time. You wake, no bell, no morning light. Your room is still dark. You sit up, heart calm, too calm. You reach for the clock, 3:18. You rarely wake during the night. You stand, walk to the desk, open the notebook, not because you want to, just because it suddenly feels obvious. You flip backward, past day 7, past day 5, past day 1. And then, before the first page, you notice something. A page folded inward. You unfold it. Only one sentence, written in your handwriting. Older, slower, different. Please don't trust the arrival. Nothing else. No explanation. You stare, then slowly close the notebook, return to bed, pull the blanket higher, and notice, for the first time, you can't remember whether the palace was called anything before you arrived. And somehow, that feels more important than anything else. The name of the palace morning arrives quietly. No surprise, no resistance. You wake moments before the bell again. And this time, instead of wondering why, you simply wait for it. The bell rings, exactly when you expect. You sit up, then stop. Something feels different, small, easy to miss. You look around the room. Everything is the same. The curtains, the desk, the notebook. And yet, for a second, you have the strange feeling that the room already knew you would wake now. You dress, go downstairs. Breakfast is unchanged. Tea, silver, soft voices, routine. But today, you've decided something. You're going to ask a question directly. No hints, no careful wording. Just ask. You wait until breakfast ends, then approach the server, the same one, the calm expression, the practiced voice. You ask, "What is this place called?" The server looks at you, not surprised, not hesitant, almost relieved. Then they answer, "The Palace of Returning." You wait, expecting explanation. None comes. So you ask, "Returning to what?" The server smiles, not warmly, not coldly, just gently, and says, "That tends to become clear," then walks away. You stand there. The Palace of Returning. You repeat the words quietly, once, twice, and suddenly your chest feels strange. Not fear, recognition, like hearing the title of a book you forgot you had read. You leave the dining hall, walk through the eastern corridor, the one with the room that wasn't on the map. Halfway there, you stop, because something arrives in your mind. Not a memory, not exactly, just a sentence, clear, certain, and completely unexpected. You chose this place. You stop walking. Chosen? No. You remember booking, traveling, arriving, don't you? You try to think. Open browser, hotel, reservation, confirmation, but you can't remember making any decision, only remembering that you must have. You continue walking, past room 43, past room 45. This time, The hidden room appears immediately. No searching, no touching the wall. The doorway is already open. Inside the chair, the map exactly the same, except now there's something else. A guest book by a thin, dark cover. You open it, names, dates, short notes. Most pages say simple things. Very peaceful. It felt easier than expected. Would return. Then, near the end, you find your name, your handwriting, no date, only one sentence. Thank you for letting me begin again. You stare, read it again, again. The words don't feel familiar, but they don't feel impossible. You close the book, leave the room, walk slowly back, and all afternoon, one thought follows you. Not, have I been here before? But why would I want to come back? That night, you open the notebook, turn to day 7, write one line. If I chose this place, what was I leaving? You wait, nothing happens. You close the notebook, turn off the light, and just before sleep, you notice something. The card beside your bed, the one that used to say, Day 2 begins, now says, Welcome back. The photograph taken before you arrived. You wake before the bell, not because you planned to, not because you slept well. You simply wake, with the strange feeling that something is waiting. The room is quiet, curtains closed, morning not fully here yet. You sit up and notice something on the desk, a photograph, small, black and white, no frame. You're certain it wasn't there last night. You pick it up. At first, nothing seems unusual. It's you, standing outside, wearing the same coat you arrived in, looking directly at the camera, expression neutral, background slightly blurred. You turn it over, no date, no note, nothing. You look again, and then you notice it. Behind you, the palace, not unusual, except in the photograph, there's snow. You didn't arrive in winter. You remember sunlight, warm air, green gardens. You look closer, your clothes match, your face matches, but the season doesn't. You set the photograph down, then pick it up again, because something else feels wrong. You don't look surprised, you don't look tired, you look familiar, like someone standing somewhere they already know. Breakfast feels quieter today, or maybe you notice silence more now. You bring the photograph, not to show anyone, just to keep it with you. Halfway through breakfast, the older guest from the library notices it, looks at the picture, smiles softly, then says, That one came out nicely. You freeze. You ask, You've seen this before? They think for a moment, then answer, I think everyone receives one eventually. You stare. They continue eating. You ask, Who takes them? They smile again and say, I never asked. That answer stays with you because somehow it doesn't feel careless. It feels practiced. You leave, walk through the gardens, sit near the fountain, take the photograph out again. This time, you notice writing, not ink, pressed into the paper, almost invisible. You tilt it toward the light. Words appear, taken during your previous arrival. You stop breathing for a second, then read it again. Previous, not first, not original. Previous. You flip the photograph over. Blank. You look at your face again, trying to remember, trying to force something back. And for the briefest second, you remember standing there. Cold air, snow, someone beside you, a voice saying, You don't need to remember immediately. Then nothing. Gone, like waking from a dream. That evening, back in your room, you open the drawer, the notebooks, the old paper, the cards. You place the photograph beside them, and suddenly, you realize something here. Every object in this room exists to remind you of something, except Nothing reminds you of leaving. You turn the photograph over one last time, and this time, there's new writing. Only one sentence, appearing where there was nothing before. You stayed longer that time. You place the photograph face down, turn off the light, lie still, and for the first time, you don't wonder whether you've been here before. You wonder what made you leave. The name you answer to the next morning, you wake before the bell again. Not suddenly, not fully, just slowly, as if part of you had already been awake for a while. The room feels familiar, too familiar. You sit up, and for a moment, you forget which part feels strange. Then you remember the photograph, the words. You stayed longer that time. You don't look at it. You leave it face down, get dressed, open the door. The hallway is quiet, as always. But today, something feels softer, less like visiting, more like returning. You walk downstairs, breakfast, tea, silver, the same seat, except you don't choose it. You simply walk there, sit. Only after sitting do you realize you never decided. A server appears, places tea beside your hand, smiles, then says, without hesitation, "Good morning, Elias." You look up, pause, because that isn't your name. At least, you don't think it is. The server continues naturally, no apology, no correction, as if nothing unusual happened. And then, without thinking, you answer, "Good morning." Only after speaking, you realize you answered immediately, like you had heard that name before. You stay quiet. The server leaves. You tell yourself it means nothing, a mistake, someone else, but the feeling stays. Later, in the library, you test something. You open the guest book, turn to your page, your signature, your sentence, and beneath it, smaller writing, easy to miss. "Welcome back, Elias." You close the book immediately, stand, walk away, too quickly. The hallway feels longer today. You return to your room, lock the door, sit beside the window, and ask yourself something simple. If that isn't your name, why didn't it feel wrong? You take a blank sheet of paper, write your name, slowly, look at it, read it, again, again. And strangely, it feels unfamiliar, not false, just distant, like reading about someone else. You turn the page. Without thinking, you write Elias. The letters come easier, cleaner, like handwriting that remembers itself. You stop, look at both names. Neither feels completely yours. You close your eyes, try to remember arriving, and suddenly, a memory, brief, incomplete. You're standing in snow, someone beside you. They hand you a key and ask, "Will you be returning under the same name?" You answer immediately, certain. But the dream ends before you hear what you said. You open your eyes, back in your room, desk, paper, silence. Then you notice something. The card beside the bed changed again. Now it says, "Names become easier over time." You sit quietly, reading it, because suddenly you're not wondering whether you've stayed here before. You're wondering how many times. The room where guests leave things behind. That evening, you decide not to think about names. Not yours, not Elias, not returning. You tell yourself you're only tired, and yet, all evening, you notice something strange. People carry very little here. No bags, no books, no personal objects. Guests move through the palace lightly, as if they arrived with less than they intended, or stayed long enough to stop needing things. After dinner, you walk without destination, past the gardens, past the reading room, past the eastern hallway. You don't mean to explore, you simply keep moving, and eventually you realize you're somewhere you've never seen before, A narrow corridor, soft lighting, no windows, no paintings, only doors, each identical. No numbers, no labels. At the end, one open doorway. Inside, a room. Small, warm, quiet. Shelves from floor to ceiling, filled with objects. Not valuable things, not dramatic things, ordinary things. A scarf, a watch, a notebook, a train ticket, a single glove, old headphones, a coffee receipt, a house key, thousands of them, carefully arranged. You step inside. No signs, no instructions, only one sentence engraved into the wall. For comfort, guests may leave behind what is no longer needed. You walk slowly, reading small labels, not names, just notes. Stopped missing this, no longer useful, felt lighter afterward, couldn't remember why I kept it. You continue, shelf after shelf, and then you stop. Your breath stays quiet. On one shelf, a small object, a wristwatch, your watch, the one you wore when you arrived. You know it immediately. Small scratch near the edge, faded strap. You pick it up, turn it over. There's a label. Returned during previous stay. You stand still. You never lost this watch. You remember packing it. You remember checking the time, don't you? You look at your wrist, empty. You hadn't noticed. You put the watch on, cold at first, then comfortable, too comfortable, and suddenly, a feeling, not memory, just feeling, standing in the same room, holding the same watch, but thinking, I won't need this anymore. The feeling disappears. You quickly place the watch back, step away, continue walking. Then, another shelf, a photograph, face down. You don't touch it. A folded paper, untouched. Then something unexpected. A small wooden box. Label, name. Nothing inside. You stare, empty. And somehow, that feels more personal than anything else. You leave immediately. Walk back quickly. Back to your room. Close the door. Lock it. Sit quietly. Then notice. Your desk feels emptier, not physically, just lighter. You look around, trying to understand, and suddenly you realize something simple. You can't remember what timepiece you used before coming here. Not the watch, not your phone, nothing. Only that you once cared. You look toward the bed. A card waits there. New, 3 lines. Guests may reclaim items. Most choose not to. You turn the card over, blank. But for the first time, you don't feel afraid, only curious. What else? Have you already left here? The door marked departure. The next morning, the bell doesn't wake you, because you're already awake. Not fully, just quietly awake, lying still, listening, waiting for the sound. When it arrives, it feels less like being called and more like being confirmed. You get dressed, go downstairs, breakfast, tea, soft voices, everything exactly where it should be. And today, you notice something new. Nobody ever asks what comes next. Nobody asks when they're leaving. Nobody asks what day it is. As if those questions slowly become unnecessary. You finish breakfast, stand, and decide. Today, you'll look for something obvious. Not hidden rooms, not old notebooks, just an exit. The palace must have one. You walk, long hallways, quiet stairs, garden paths, service corridors. Eventually, you find a section you don't remember seeing before. Bright, simple, almost ordinary. At the end, a single door, clean white paint, small bronze plaque. One word? Departure. You stop. The word feels strange, not because of what it means, but because nobody ever mentioned it. You wait, expect someone to stop you. Nobody does. Guests walk past. Staff continue working. No one even looks at the door. You stand beside it, Watch people pass. Eventually, you ask a guest, quietly, "Have you ever opened this?" The guest looks at the door, thinks, then smiles and says, "No." You ask, "Why not?" They think again, then answer, "I haven't needed to," and continue walking. You wait longer. Another guest passes. You ask, "Do people leave through here?" The guest looks confused, not uncomfortable, just confused, then replies, "People leave when they're ready. Not through, not by, just leave." You place your hand on the handle, warm, unexpectedly warm. You hesitate, not because you're afraid, because suddenly, opening it feels rude, like interrupting someone speaking. You push. The door opens immediately, no resistance. Inside, another hallway, soft light, same carpet, same silence. At the far end, another white door, same plaque. Departure, you stand, wait, walk forward, open that one. Another hallway, another door, departure, again and again. No matter how many doors, there's always another. Not longer, not darker, just another. Eventually, you stop opening them, turn around, walk back, and after only a few steps, you're back in the palace. Breakfast noise, sunlight, normal, as if you never left. You look back, no door, only wall. You stand there quietly, then notice a small frame hanging beside where the door had been. Inside, one sentence: "Leaving and reaching the end are not the same thing." That evening, you return to your room, open the notebook, turn to day 7, write, "Today I found the exit." You wait. Nothing happens. Then, slowly, new writing appears beneath yours. That isn't what you found. You stare, read it again, close the notebook, turn off the light, and before sleeping, a thought arrives. Small, gentle, unexpected. You no longer want to know how to leave. You want to know why nobody else does. The guest who remembers their first stay the next morning. You wake before the bell again. You don't move. You lie still, trying to remember the dream you didn't have. It feels like something visited your thoughts and left before morning. The bell rings, soft, expected. You sit up, and for a moment, you have the strange feeling that the sound arrived from inside the room. Breakfast is unchanged, tea, silver, quiet conversation, the same rhythm. But today, you notice someone new, or not new, someone you're strangely sure you've seen before, a guest sitting alone, window seat, dark clothes, a closed book on the table, nothing unusual, except they're looking around, not politely, not aimlessly, actually looking, like they still expect things to surprise them. You sit nearby. Neither of you speaks at first. Then, without looking at you, they ask, "Which day are you on?" You pause. You almost answer, then realize you don't know. You say, "I stopped counting." The guest smiles, not because it's funny, more like recognition. Then they say, "That happened to me too." You wait. They finally turn toward you and say, "The first time." You look at them and look carefully, then ask, "You've stayed here before?" They nod. Simple. Certain. No mystery. You expect questions, explanations. Instead, they take a sip of tea and say, "The first day felt longer." You ask, "How long?" They think, then shrug, and answer, "Long enough that leaving felt strange." You stay quiet, then ask, "Why did you come back?" The guest thinks longer this time, looks toward the garden, then says, "I wanted to see whether it felt different." You wait. They continue. "It did." You ask, "How?" They smile slightly, then say, "The first time I thought this place was changing me." A pause. "The second time I wondered if it only removes things you are already tired of carrying." You don't answer. You think about the room of forgotten objects, the watch, the notebook, the names. You ask, carefully, do people remember leaving? They smile, small, distant, and then say, more than they remember arriving. You ask, do you remember your first day? The guest becomes quiet, looks down, then says, only one moment. You wait. They continue, very softly. The morning I realized I wasn't waiting to go home anymore. Silence. You don't know why, but that sentence stays with you. After a while, they stand, pick up their book, and before leaving, they say one more thing without turning back. If you ever find yourself feeling completely comfortable, a pause, then write something down. They leave, no explanation. That afternoon, back in your room, you open the notebook, turn to the latest page, and write, I still think I want to leave. You close it. Wait. Nothing. Hours later, before sleep, you open it again. Underneath the new handwriting, same as before. That's good. You stare at the sentence because somehow you can't tell if it's encouragement or concern. Then, for the first time, you notice the notebook's pages. There are fewer left than yesterday. You don't remember writing enough for that to happen. The person who remembers leaving that night. You don't open the notebook, not because you're afraid of what it might say, only because you want one thought that hasn't already been answered. You leave the room, walk slowly through the palace. The hallways feel different at night, not darker, just less certain, like they expect you to know where you're going. And tonight, without thinking, you do, past the library, past the eastern wing, past the white wall where the departure door used to appear, down a narrow staircase. You don't remember discovering it. You simply arrive. At the bottom, a lounge, small, warm, soft lamps, a fireplace, only one person there, reading. You stop, because immediately, this is the guest, the one from breakfast, the one who remembered their first day. They look up, close the book, and say, you came earlier this time. You stay still, then ask, earlier than what? They smile, not mysterious, just like someone noticing familiar weather, then shake their head. Sorry. They gesture toward the chair. You sit. For a while, nobody speaks. The fire makes almost no sound. Eventually, you ask, do you remember leaving? The guest nods. Immediately. No hesitation. You wait. They say, very clearly. You lean forward and ask, what was it like, they think. Then answer softly. Quiet. A pause. Then, no ceremony. No goodbye. They look into the fire. One day, I woke up somewhere else. You ask, home? They think. Longer this time. Then answer, I think so. You frown slightly. They notice, smile, then explain. That's the strange part. You wait. They continue. I remember leaving. A pause. I don't remember being away. The room becomes very quiet. You ask, what do you mean? They close the book, set it aside, then say, I remember the first morning after. You wait. They continue. Everything looked normal. Breakfast, sunlight, messages, work, people, life, all normal. But they stop, then say, it felt like I had returned from somewhere important. You ask, and you didn't remember where? They nod. Once, then add, only that I missed it. You don't answer. They continue. For months, I kept expecting something. You ask, what? They smile, almost embarrassed, then say, the bell. Silence. The fire continues quietly. You ask, very carefully, so why did you come back? They look at you, long enough that you almost regret asking. Then finally, they answer, because I wanted to know whether I had left. A pause, their voice softer now, or just forgotten how to stay. You don't speak. Something about the sentence feels too close, too familiar. The guest stands, picks up the book, walks toward the door, then stops. Without turning, they say, "If you leave," a pause, "then take something with you." You ask, "Like what?" They think, then answer, "Something you would notice missing," and leave. You sit there alone, long after. Eventually, you return to your room, open the drawer, notebook, photograph, cards, a watch, all still there. You stare at them and realize you don't know which one you would take. Then you notice something. Beside the notebook, a folded paper. You unfold it. Only one sentence, handwritten. Last time, you chose nothing. You sit quietly, reading it again, because suddenly you can't remember whether leaving empty-handed sounds sad or familiar. The hallway of your handwriting. The next morning, you wake before the bell again. But something feels different. Not the room, not the silence, not even yourself. It's the feeling that something has already happened, and you simply haven't reached it yet. The bell rings. You wait for the usual calm. It comes. But underneath it, something else. Expectation. Breakfast feels shorter today. People move the same, smile the same, speak the same. And suddenly, you realize you've stopped wondering whether they're pretending. Now, you wonder if they remember. You finish early, without planning to. You walk past the library, past the gardens, past the room of forgotten things, past the place where departure used to appear, and eventually you arrive somewhere unfamiliar. A hallway, long, perfectly straight, soft lighting, no windows, only doors, many of them, each identical, except each has a small brass plaque. No room numbers, but only handwriting. You move closer and stop because you recognize it immediately. Your handwriting, not similar, not close, yours. Every plaque, different words, different doors, same hand. You step toward the first. It says, "Things I stopped missing." Second door, questions that became quieter. Third, names that no longer felt necessary. You stare, walk farther, more doors. Places I thought I wanted back, versions of myself, reasons to leave. You stop. The final one feels colder, smaller. The plaque reads, "Things I planned to remember." You stand there, looking. None of the doors are locked. No signs, no warnings. You open one, slowly, inside. Empty room, nothing. It's only shelves. And on the shelves, labels. No objects, just labels, like something had once been stored there. You read them. Sunday mornings, the sound of old keys, the name of the cafe, that conversation, the reason it mattered. You close the door, try another. Inside, chairs, empty, each with a folded card. You open one, only one sentence. You carried this longer than necessary. Another. You thought losing this would hurt more. You close it immediately, walk faster, past more doors. Then you see one, near the end. The handwriting looks slower, older. The plaque says, "What I wanted to take with me." You stop, long time, then open it. Small room, one table, one object, nothing else. A photograph, face down. You already know. You pick it up, turn it over. It's not the palace, not snow, not a rival, just a room, ordinary. Sunlight, a chair, a window, and someone sitting there. You, looking away, relaxed, comfortable, living. At the bottom, your handwriting. This was enough. You stare, longer than you mean to, because suddenly you can't tell whether the picture feels familiar or impossible. You place it back, leave the room, close the door, and when you turn, the hallway is shorter, only a few doors remain. You walk back quickly, return to your room, open the notebook, write. Today I found rooms with my handwriting. You wait. Nothing. Then, one line appears underneath, slowly, almost gently. You called them rooms before. You stop, read it again. Before? Before what? You turn the page, blank, except a title, already written, waiting. Part 18, the map that shows where you returned from. You close the notebook, turn off the light, and for the first time, you don't wonder whether these things belong to you. You wonder whether they became yours only after you forgot them. The room you haven't chosen yet. The next morning, you wake before the bell, but something feels unusual. Not because something changed, because for the first time, you expect something too. The bell rings, soft, measured, so familiar. You sit up and notice something small. The room feels settled, not cleaner, not warmer, just less temporary. You stand, look around. The desk, the chair, the notebook, the photograph, the map folded neatly inside, and suddenly a strange thought arrives. You've never once asked how long this room was yours. At breakfast, everything continues as usual. Tea, quiet voices, soft light. You sit. A server places your cup down, then pauses, not waiting, just checking something, then asks, "Have you chosen your room yet?" You look up, almost smile. You answer, "I'm already staying in one." The server nods, like they expected that, then say, "For now," and leave. You sit quietly. For now. You finish breakfast, walk upstairs, back to your room, stand in the doorway, and suddenly you notice something impossible. There's no room number, not outside, not inside, not anymore. Only a small card beside the handle. You pick it up, one sentence. Rooms remain temporary until selected. You look around. This room, your room, has it always looked like this? You try to remember the first day, the large bed, the curtains, the silence. But suddenly details feel uncertain. You remember being here. You don't remember arriving here. That afternoon, you explore. For the first time, you notice other doors, guest rooms, some open, some closed, and each room different, not in decoration, in feeling. One room filled with sunlight, one quiet and narrow, one overlooking gardens, one with walls covered in books. Guests move through them naturally, like people returning home. You ask someone quietly, "Do people change rooms?" The guest thinks, then answers, "Only until they stop." You ask, "How do they choose?" They smile, then say, "Usually they notice they already did." You continue walking, room after room. None feel wrong, none feel right, until, near the end of a hallway, you find one. Door open. It's simple. Inside, a chair, a desk, window, nothing unusual. And yet, you stop, not because you like it, because it feels expected, like entering halfway through a conversation. You step inside. On the desk, a folded note. You open it. Your handwriting, only one sentence. You picked this one last time. You stand still, look around again. Nothing dramatic, nothing special, just comfortable. You leave immediately. Return to your current room. Close the door. Sit beside the window. And for the first time, your room feels different. Not smaller, not worse, just borrowed. It's that evening. You open the notebook, or write. "I thought this room was temporary." You wait. Nothing. Then new writing appears. Short, careful. You always do. You stare. Read it again. Then look around. Curtains, desk, bed, silence, and suddenly you realize something strange. You've spent all this time wondering how people leave, but never once asked how people stay. Before sleeping, you notice the card beside the bed changed again. Now it says, "Selection begins tomorrow." You turn off the light and lie quietly, because for the first time, you're not wondering whether you belong here. You're wondering what choosing means. The room that chooses the next morning. You wake before the bell, but for the first time, you don't wait for it. You sit at the edge of the bed, looking around. The room feels careful today, like nothing has moved, but everything has been adjusted slightly. You notice the chair angled differently, the curtains opened a little more, the notebook centered on the desk. Small things, easy to ignore. You don't. Then the bell rings, soft, expected, and somehow, far away, you get dressed, open the door. Outside, the hallway feels unusual. Guests are standing quietly, not gathered, not lined up, just waiting. Nobody speaks, nobody looks uncertain. A staff member walks past, stops beside you, and says, "Selection day can feel unfamiliar," then continues walking. You don't ask what that means. Breakfast is quieter. No announcements, no instructions, only one difference. No one returns upstairs afterward. People drift naturally through the palace, like they already know where they're meant to go. You follow hallways, rooms, open doors, sunlight, silence. At first, nothing happens. You enter rooms, leave. Some feel comfortable, some don't. Some feel empty, some feel finished as hours pass. You stop trying, then, without deciding, you arrive back at the room, the one with the chair, the desk, the window, your handwriting. You stand in the doorway. Nothing special, nothing calling you, and somehow that makes it harder to leave. You step inside, sit, wait, nothing. Minutes pass. Then you notice something. There's no door, not gone, just not there anymore. Behind you, wall. You stand, look around, still calm. No panic, only quiet. Then the room changes. Not physically, not suddenly, just details. A second chair, a different lamp, a shelf, objects appearing slowly, as though the room is remembering. You walk to the desk, open the drawer, inside, papers, neatly stacked, handwritten, yours, pages and pages, dated, not numbered. You read one. Today, the room feels quieter. I think that means I'm staying. Another. I moved the chair closer to the window. Another. I forgot I chose this room. Again. You stop reading. Look around. The shelf now contains objects, not random ones. The photograph, the watch, the map, the notebook, everything, already placed, as if they belonged here. You sit again. The room settles. No sound, no movement, only finished. Then, on the desk, a card appears. Simple, cream paper, one sentence. Rooms do not choose guests. They remember them. You stare. Long time. Then notice smaller writing underneath, almost hidden. Selection is remembering. The wall where the door used to be shifts quietly. The hallway returns. Open. Normal. You step outside. Nobody reacts. Guests walk past. Staff continue working. Nothing unusual. You look back. The room looks ordinary, empty, temporary, until you notice something beside the frame. A small brass plaque. No number, only one word, written in your handwriting. Return. That evening, you go back to your original room, open the notebook. Write. I think I found my room. You wait. Nothing. Then one line appears, slowly, like someone writing carefully. No, you remembered it. You close the notebook, turn off the light, and lie quietly, because tonight, for the first time, you realize maybe this place was never trying to change you. Maybe it was waiting for you to stop expecting to become someone else.